Hi and welcome to this video. In this video we will talk about Blender interface. So as you see, I have an open Blender file on my screen. When you open Blender, the first thing you see is the splash screen. The splash screen is important in case you updated your Blender, so it's going to help you to import the setting. You will see on the bottom of the splash screen an option to import the setting from your old Blender file. We can close it by just clicking somewhere in the 3D viewport and it's going to disappear. Now let's get into the Blender interface. Blender interface is separated into three main parts: the top bar and the areas in the middle and the status bar at the bottom. Now let's talk about the status bar. The status bar is just a place for some contextual information about your Blender file. You can see some information about the memory, the status of rendering, or some shortcuts. And you can add or remove some information by just using the right mouse click and check or uncheck the information that you want or you don't want to see. You can hide the status bar by going to the border of it, the top border, and just dragging it to the bottom. It's going to hide it or show it. That was all about the status bar. Now let's move to the top bar. In the top bar we have two menus. The first one is the Blender menu file. Here you can import, export files, you can save, open files, and you can recover the files in case of crash. The workspace menu is just a predefined or standard spaces areas that comes with Blender, and it's made to make it easy to work in certain areas. Like for example, if you want to animate something, you have a special workspace for animation. If you want to do modeling, there is a workspace that is made for modeling. There is for layout, sculpting, and so on and so forth. In most of the cases, you are going to work in layout. There is also something very important and worth to mention. You can change these workspaces, you can update them, create new ones by clicking on this plus icon and saving or updating any workspace that you would like to change. Now let's move to the areas. The areas are where most of your work is going to happen. So we have the 3D viewport area, and we have the outliner, we have the properties sidebar, and we have the toolbar on the left side, we have the object mode menu. And the most important thing about them all, they are all customizable. So you can join two windows, you can split them, you can resize them. You can do a lot of things with these windows. And as you can see, if I go to the border between two areas, my mouse cursor is going to be different. It's going to show two arrows, which means it's resizable. So I can resize the window by using the left mouse click and drag it to the left or the right. It's going to resize the window. You can do this with all of your areas. As you see, I'm moving the timeline. And if you want to join or split windows or areas, you can just use the right mouse click. And as you see, we have four options: vertical split, horizontal split, join areas, swap areas. I think that's all about customizing the areas. Now let's talk a little bit about the outliner. The outliner is on the right side of your window. It's the place where you can see all your layers or objects. You can create new collections, you can hide or show your elements. You can even disable the rendering of this object by clicking on the camera icon on the right side. So it's not going to be rendered in the final image. Now let's move to the properties panel. Here you can change the setting of your 3D viewport. You can change your rendering engine, you can change the light setting or the camera setting. You can change the word, like give it a background or HDR as background, and you'll have another or extra tabs or properties if you select an object. Like when we select the camera, like when we select the light, we will have a light icon, and here we can change the setting of our light. And if I select the cube, we will have an extra material tab. Here we can add a material to our cube. If I select the camera, we will have a camera tab. Here we can change the perspective, the focal length, and we can change a lot of setting. Now let's move to the display and shading menu. Here we can change the viewport shading. For example, we have the wire edge shading, we have the solid mode, and here we have the material preview mode, and at the end we have the rendered mode. And the render preview is gonna be difficult to render because it's a real-time render, and if you are using Eevee, it's gonna be easy on your computer, not that hard. But if you are gonna change it to cycles, it's gonna take a long time. Depends on your computer and how good is your GPU, your graphic card. Under the display and shading menu, we have the navigation. So here we can navigate in our 3D viewport. As you can see, we have X, Y, and Z. So if I click on X, it change the 3D viewport to the X axis, and Y, it's going to change it to the Y axis, and Z, it's going to change it to the Z axis. And we have the zoom. So if I click on the magnifier icon, it's going to zoom. And we have another way to zoom, it's the mouse wheel. So the mouse wheel is also used for zooming. We have also under the magnifier icon, we have the move view icon. So we can click on it and move the 3D viewport. It's not zooming, it's just moving. We have also the camera view. As you see, now it's the camera view, it's our camera. It's going to be the rendered region. So if I'm going to render now, it's going to render the camera view. So let me go to render, and you can see it rendered the same view of the camera. Now let's move to the left, and we have the transform menu. If you want to snap your object to a surface, here you can use this menu, or if you want to change the transform pivot point. Now let's move to the left side, and here we have the mode menu. Here we can change between different modes like edit mode, sculpting mode. And as you can see, these menus are going to be different depending on the mode you are in. And here we have the tools that we need to use in editing our object. And here we have like moving or scaling, rotating our objects. We are not going to rely on the toolbar because we are going to use most of the time shortcuts. For example, for scaling, we are going to use S. As you see, we scale the whole object. And for rotation, we are going to use R. So R for rotation. And for moving, we are going to use G. We can snap them to the axis. So if we click on S and X, so it's gonna scale the object to the X axis. If we click on S scale and Y, it's gonna scale it on the Y axis. Now let's talk about the timeline at the bottom. At the bottom we have a window, and it's the timeline window. Here we can play our animation, add keyframes, animate keyframes in the timeline. And we can also change it. For example, change the whole window. So if we want to have a different window, for example, and we don't want to change the workspace, we can have, for example, the shader editor. And here, as you can see, we have a different area. And we can go back to the timeline. We can add a text editor. We can customize it the way we want. If you don't want to change the window at the bottom and bring the shader editor here, you can go to the shading workspace. And as you see, we have the shader editor at the bottom of our workspace. I think you see I have an extra menu in the middle of my Blender. It's the Blender Kit menu, and I use it to speed up my work because I can download directly materials, as you see, and I have a search field. I can search for materials, I can search for HDR backgrounds, I can find models. I'm using the free version, so as you see, most of them are locked, but I can filter them to the free first, so I'm gonna see just the free models. I think that was all. It was just a quick, I think, introduction of Blender interface. You will learn more by using Blender. So see you in the next video. If you have any question, please leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe.